Welcome, everybody. Really happy to see you all come out for our speaker event. I think this is going to be a really meaningful experience for us all. I was first introduced to the idea of, or the philosophy of gentle teaching a few years ago now, and I've been exposed to it pretty consistently since then. And the thing that struck me when I first started learning about gentle teaching is how it really matches up with the values and the practices that take place in public libraries. And I think that as Ben and Rochelle, get into their presentation, you're definitely going to see the intersection between what they do at Creative Options and what we do in our libraries. So that was kind of the heart of why I initially proposed gentle teaching as a speaker event, because I think that the way that libraries take care of their communities and care for patrons who come in from such a variety of backgrounds and with such a wide array of different needs is very similar to what we're going to be hearing about. And this gentle teaching philosophy, I think, is really helpful for creating spaces that meet people where they're at, instead of focusing on some other destination that you wish that they were at. So that's kind of the background behind what led us to this event. And I'm really, really happy to see you all here today. I'm very proud to introduce Ben and Rochelle from Creative Options Regina, here to present to us on gentle teaching. And with that, I'm going to zip it and they're going to take over. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Hey, how's it going? As I speak to a bunch of squares. This is the first time we've ever really done this way. So yeah, bear with us.
Tech is not our friend often. So as Jesse had mentioned, we are Rochelle and Ben. So we're excited to be able to share a little bit about gentle teaching with you guys today, as well as what some of our experiences have been within the gentle teaching philosophy. We do have a warehouse located below us. I'm hoping you're not picking up on all the noise that just came through from there, but if you are, I apologize. So yeah, I am Rochelle. I've been with Creative Options Regina for about 7.5 years now, actually. So I am within our learning and development team here at CORE. So I have the opportunity to facilitate a number of trainings that we offer not only for our employees here, but also, members of the community as well.
My name's Ben. As Jesse introduced us, I am the creative director here at CORE, and I have had a many hats here at CORE. I've been a frontline support, as Rochelle has, so supporting our folks that boots on the ground. And then since then, I've done partnerships and storytelling. I've done everything from programming to design stuff. I mean, the list goes on. And nonprofits, folks, you probably have heard this, but you wear a lot of hats, and both of us do that quite frequently. As Rochelle said, technology is no one's friend. However, we are both often tasked with the technology thing that is computers. And coming out of post-pandemic, we're kind of a little bit more well-versed than we were once upon a time. So that's where we're at. But anyway, it's great to be here. One of the things that I think is important to mention is something that Jesse has already touched on. To give you a little info of just about how this is in practice and how it relates to you folks. A lot of my best examples of the things that we do and what makes our philosophy different comes from a book club that I run at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays. Here in Regina, we have a place called Comic Readers Downtown, and there's 2 comic readers there in Regina, but specifically the one that we hang out in is the Comic Readers Downtown. And it's really cool. We spend some time in the back, and that's where in the back is where the folks who play Dungeons and Dragons, and the folks that play Magic, and the folks that play Baldur's Gate, and all those little games, they're so fun. And like, that's where we get to hang out and do our book club. And the amount of traffic that comes in and out of that space on a everyday basis, but specifically on the days that we're there. People looking for free programming, people looking for to see that brand new issue that just came out this week. People who don't really have a lot of meaningful programming during their day, or are just seeking a group of people who are like-minded like them. They frequent this space, and we get people dropping in our book club. I mean, we originally have 5 members, but there are times when we have 6 or 7 or 8 people joining us just around our book reading table, which is super fun. I could describe it later if you guys want to hear, but anyway, y'all probably run a book club before, so I don't need to. And anyway, let me know if you do. But the point I'm trying to get at is these spaces serve a community of people who are looking for programming. These spaces serve a community of people who maybe don't have meaningful programming in their day. That's jobs, that's everything. I mean, just anything you can think of. And so in a way, these spaces support folks, some of the most vulnerable in the sector, some people just looking for something to do in their day, some people just moms. But whether you mean to or don't, whether you have programming for it specifically or not, just by proxy where you exist, where you frequent, libraries play such a vital role to the community in that sense. And your shoes are huge because you have to serve people. You have to serve so many different people. And the reason this philosophy makes sense is because it is for every person. And you'll hear us talk a little bit today about how this is a hat that doesn't come off. It's a hat that you wear all the time as far as this philosophy goes. And in a sense, you're like, oh, that seems kind of culty, or that seems, but at the end of the day, it's not. It's just really just about being a good person and being good all the time, no matter what space you frequent, no matter where you hang out, and to whoever you hang out with. So with that said, I'm going to take my first big step into technology world, and I'm going to minimize this and bring up our training. But I have to share my screen first, so I'm going to do that. And I've optimized all the correct things. Sharing. Does it go? Optimize this.
Yeah.
And go back up. Oh,
there we go.
How do I bring up the other thing?
What do you mean the other thing?
Nothing. Just kidding. Okay, cool.
All right, so just so that we're good, Jesse, you guys can still see that screen again?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. Perfect. All right.
Rochelle?
Gentle teaching. So this is a very, I want to say a surface level workshop that we're going to go through today. You know, we do have another sort of level to this that really dives into a lot of these ideas, but right now we're just going to sort of present sort of like our sort of 3 key takeaway areas, I guess, in regards to what gentle teaching is. So with that, do you want to go to the next slide, Ben?
Yeah.
That's you.
We got John McGee. So I always like to start talking about John McGee, but what I really want to do is let John McGee speak for John McGee. I will give you a little background on this fella. Once upon a time, John was here with us, but he has since passed away in 2012. And but his ideas and his philosophy of care, it originally just started in the disability world. That's what we do here at CORE. We support folks with intellectual disabilities and mental health concerns in the city of Regina. But this man's philosophy of care really formalized what it means to be intentional in the work that you do and how you treat people the way that they deserve to be treated, because they're a whole person. They're a person that deserves the rights that we have. And I am going to let him speak about himself, because the work that he did started a whole movement, not just here in Regina, but essentially in the state of Michigan, where gentle teaching at the time, and it may still be, there's some stuff happening down there, but at the time became government mandated, and the way that you treated all people. So 1 second.
So I'm going to do two things. One is give a little overview for those of you who aren't familiar with it, of what this culture of gentleness is and can become, and within that, what gentle teaching is. And I'll try to share some new ideas about what direction I would like things to go in. I think we're all instruments, and so we're very fortunate to be here and to be able to talk and share all of our thoughts and ideas. Maybe I should spend just a minute talking about why I do what I do. When I was much younger, when I graduated from college with a degree in metaphysics, it's a study of whether we exist or not. And at the same time, my co-major was classical Greek. So if you ever want to read Winnie the Pooh in Greek, I'm the man. And then I lived and worked with, I went to Brazil because I saw a picture in a magazine and it said street child in Brazil. And that inspired me to spend the next many years working with street children in Brazil. And they actually worked with me. They would steal food for me. We lived on a garbage dump, so it was, there was no supermarket. And they would take care of me and watch over me. One night, someone was nibbling on my ear in bed, I thought, and I lit a candle and it was a rat. So they gave me a cat to keep the rat up there and me down here. So anyway, I did that for many years, and I really didn't realize that I was learning something. It was a very joyful experience in the midst of hellish suffering, but it was a joyful experience because when you have nothing, people have to be interdependent. And coming from the United States, I really didn't experience interdependence that much, or that clearly, let's say. Anyway, when I earned enough money to come back home, I hadn't been home in 10 years, and went to the airport. I begged a ride on a Pan American airline plane. Yeah, I don't want to fall. And I didn't have a job. And so my mom called a plumber. My mother called a plumber. Where I'm from, the city council politicians are plumbers and bus drivers. They're simple people. So she said our toilet was broken at home. And then she said, oh, Johnny's in town. Oh, little Johnny's back in Omaha. Well, he's not so little anymore. And so he came out and fixed the toilet that wasn't broken. And then my mom said, he needs a job. Oh, glory be to God. We just started a program. Omaha, where I'm from, was the first city in the United States to begin to develop community programs for people with intellectual disabilities. And so I became the director of that because I knew classical Greek and I wasn't sure whether people existed or not. And I walked through and saw 90 people with intellectual disabilities. I think the only quality I had is I was innocent, okay? And they gave me an office and a secretary, and I walked around and I saw all these 90 men and women with intellectual disabilities who had been in a horrible, ugly place most of their lives. And, but they didn't surprise me. What surprised me was the staff. People were making fun of them, were yelling at them, were tying them up, were putting them in the furnace room. It's like pre-timeout rooms. And so I wrote a memo, and it was from John Joseph McGee. That's how I was raised. And I said, from this day hence, there will be no more, and then I listed, making fun of people, criticizing people, pushing and pulling people, and a list like that. And I was sort of proud of it. Helen Schaefer, my secretary, this is like 40 years ago, typed up this thing. We mimeographed it, put it in everybody's mailbox. Everyone came and got the memo from John. And so I'm sitting in my office, being the director, I had nothing to do. So, just a joke for those of you who are directors. But the caregivers did laugh. So, I was sitting there doing nothing, and I saw a young caregiver named Sharon Elvis walking down the hallway, and she had a piece of paper in her hand. And I thought, oh, it's my memo. And so she came in, oh, hi Sharon, how are you? What the hell is this? The only memo I've ever written. And I said, well, what's wrong? And then she said something that made sense. Oh, I shouldn't use bad language for her, I'm sorry. She said, you told us what not to do. So it'd be like if I go to one of your programs and say, don't grab, don't hit, don't push, don't pull, don't yell, don't. And then I didn't tell Sharon, you're correct, because who's going to admit they're wrong? But I thought, wow, she is correct. And then I said, what do you think I should do? And she said, get out here and work with us, which is what I did. And I always attribute that memo and that little conversation as the beginning of gentle teaching. And then I didn't like what I saw. The whole, I'm very simple. And this whole reward and punishment thing smacked of meanness. Meanness. Not intentionally, because you got to do something to get kids to obey. But for the kid, it's mean. For the man or woman with an intellectual disability whom you're reprimanding, and they already have a broken heart, they see it as mean. We see it as helpful. So over the last 40 years, I started to write. The first book was called Gentle Teaching, which I really wouldn't recommend that anybody read. It's as good as I could do about 30 years ago, and that was to use behavior management, which is the thing of the day, of the past 60 years really, and take the punishment out of it. And then as I saw it, and I was doing it, I thought, oh, this is too mechanistic. It's obvious that the people we work with, the most difficult ones, have a broken heart. So as time has gone on, I talk more and more about what's inside of people and how we can mend, how we can fix or repair, but more importantly, mend broken hearts. And in that process, we actually change ourselves. So that's what I'm going to be talking with you about today.
Oh. Can I just?
It's hit or miss, you likely have to go.
Okay. So after watching that, I think the one thing that John and I have in common is that neither one of us come at this with any sort of expertise. I know what it's like to be human, and that's my expertise. But at the end of the day, I didn't go to school to become somebody who specialized in supporting folks with intellectual disabilities. I went to school to be a teacher. But that's to say that that was important. What's most important is the way that we treat people. What's most important is the 10,000 hours that we put into our own lives. And I think that when you take this philosophy as something that is just about the way we treat people and meeting people where they're at and knowing that we are the ones in this moment that need to change, though this might be a difficult situation that I'm confronted with right now, meeting this person where they are at means I might have to change in this moment to meet this person. And that's a tough thing to do, but every single one of us can do it. And not one of us needed to go to school to learn that. And I think that's one of the most important things that I take away from this is the fact that anyone can do it, no matter what your background is, what you love to do in your spare time, what your superpower is. So how do we do it?
So yeah, that sort of leads us into the idea of our central purpose. And I just kind of want to reinforce what Ben had just spoke about in regards to, the idea of changing people. A lot of times when, whether it's working with individuals or just interacting and communicating with people, often what's assumed or like sort of expected is that people need to change. People need to do something differently. They need to improve, however you want to phrase it. But within gentle teaching, it really truly is about everyone changing. And it's not changing because you're in the wrong, and it's not changing because one is better than the other. It's you're changing to meet each other where everyone's at. And in order to get there, we need to do some work to get there before we can go. And so I think that leads sort of into our central purpose, which is, as you can see on the screen, the central purpose of our presence in the lives of others is to nurture, teach, and sustain the experience of connectedness, companionship, and community. Seems like a simple enough sentence. A lot of times when we talk with our employees, we tell them like, this is essentially your job description. But there's a lot going on within the central purpose. And so even though it looks like a neat little sentence there's 9 different things happening within our central purpose. So essentially, if we were to break it down, that word nurture is going to be important. We need to nurture connectedness. We need to nurture companionship, and we need to nurture community in order to be able to teach to people that, connectedness is a good thing. Companionship is a good thing. Community is a good thing. But it's hard to have those things if we haven't nurtured relationship, if there isn't trust, if there isn't value. And so, when we talk within our central purpose, we talk about the importance of nurturing before we go into teaching, because we're very intentional in the things that we're doing with folks. And it's not to manipulate people, but we know in order to have companionship, connection, however you want to phrase it, there needs to be value and safety in there. And so that's where that nurture piece comes in before we then, like I said, teach to that connectedness, companionship, and community. And then ideally, hopefully, we can help sustain that for folks, right? We want to sustain that connectedness. We want to sustain that companionship. And ultimately, we want to sustain community for folks. And community is going to look different from each and every one of us. I bet you if we were to kind of jump out and ask each of you what community looked like for you, each of you would have a different definition for it. And I think that's something that's really important for us to keep in mind too, is, this is what we need to think about when we are supporting people, is what does community look like for that person, and how can we help foster that community? So we're going to show you guys another video from a gentleman named Michael Vincent. He's considered to be, he's now retired, but he is a master gentle teaching mentor within the gentle teaching community. And so I'm going to let Michael speak a little bit more to our central purpose.
When I reflect on our culture of gentleness, our central purpose always comes to mind, that our central purpose in the lives of others is to teach and nurture and sustain the experience of connectedness, companionship, and community that we make accessible to the people that we serve, all of the deep relationships that we enjoy in our lives and we hope for in their lives. This is not a culture of disability relationships. It is bringing to those people natural relationships to expand the quality of their life. That we approach people who are disconnected, discouraged, in deep despair, who do not know how to connect to others, who don't know how to make friends or deal with people in everyday settings. And we teach them to connect. with us. Once we've done that, we've made a commitment to the person that we help mature that relationship, and it goes deeper between us, and then sustain that relationship as we do in any of our relationships with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, with people that we randomly meet in the community. This is an active and practical approach to relationships, that it's not theoretical and it's not task-oriented, that we teach people quite literally how to touch, how to be touched, how to speak kindly to others, and how we can expand their connectedness from us to one other and then to several others, so that they are not reliant solely on our relationship with them.
So, in Michael speaking about our central purpose, you might have noticed he switched the words around, and as opposed to the nurture, teach, and sustain we had talked about, he switches teach and nurture around. Both work. However, when we get the opportunity to share more about gentle teaching, we choose to use the nurture, teach, and sustain idea, just because we feel that it's hard to teach if the person you're teaching to doesn't trust you, doesn't have a relationship with you. And so we are very big advocates in the importance of nurturing relationships before placing demands on people, or, trying to teach things, because it's really hard when, I know for myself, if I don't trust someone, I'm not going to be keen to do what they're asking of me, because there's going to be some hesitancy there and some uncertainty. So, that's one of the things that, like I said earlier, we just kind of, when we're talking gentle teaching, we focus a bit more on that nurturing piece first. But he does talk about the importance of continuing to build and teach to that idea of companionship and community. And I think it's really important. I think a lot of times individuals that we serve, or, individuals that might be coming to you guys possibly for programming or just companionship, they're often pointed in a direction where, well, you need to be able to do this for yourself. You need to do this on your own. And that's pretty lonely. So we want to be able to teach that it's okay to be with other people and, to ask for help or accept help from others. And that's where that nurturing and teaching and sustaining piece comes in.
So, gentle teaching is, I'm just going to open these up. Something is in my mind before I jump into this. Another applicable way that probably will hopefully help you once you walk away from this today is, how do I fix this in the moment? How do I nurture this philosophy in the moment? And you just have to choose those. Like, you'll be put into situations in your day-to-day, and I'm going to describe one to you. And you just have to navigate as best you can. In this book club that I was telling you about, and I told you that it attracts multiple people all the time, and it just because it's fun. What we do, it's like a table read for any sort of movie you've ever experienced. We just read for our characters in this book that we're reading, and everyone just does their own voices and has a great time. So it attracts people because we laugh a lot and we have fun. And we attracted this young man named C, and I'm just going to call him C because that's what his name is today. And he would come in, and we invite him in, of course, because there's somebody's character in there that they're more than welcome, more than happy to share. And C wanted to jump in just in this, and we didn't really know C, but C didn't recognize how our comic book club or a comic group went. And so we gave him a character, and he would always interrupt. He would just be like, "So have you guys read this manga episode, or this manga about this monster who eats the heads off of," and it just doesn't fit. It just didn't fit our group. And the goal is connection over correction. And so what we would do, and honestly, it sucks so bad, but you kind of in the moment have to say, "Hey, see, let's just at the moment, let's just read for our characters. We can talk about that monster that eats people's heads afterwards. If I mean, I'll make time for that. And C got it. And then the next person would read for their character, and they would be like, and C would be like, oh my goodness. So that character I was telling you guys about he'd eat their heads and then he'd spit it out on the table. And I'm making this up because I can't remember the exact situation, but I do know that C needed to understand how to fit into this group because he wanted to, but he needed to kind of just like be told things that we would take for granted, things that we maybe didn't understand, or we don't understand really why this person's doing the thing that they're doing, but we want them to feel safe at the same time. So how do you do that? You have to teach them or nurture them to feel safe in those moments, but then also teach them how to do it. So then when he is coming to comic book club, he can feel safe and he can feel welcome and he can want to be there because now he knows how to operate. Think about yourself in these situations. You know, someone taught you how to grocery shop. You didn't just run in there, fill your card up and run out the door. You learned that you have to pay first and you have to do this A, B, and C in order to exist in life in all different situations. Think about friendships that you have. You learn how to operate with certain people. If I'm going to talk frankly about my partner here, Rochelle, I know that Rochelle likes deadlines. Rochelle likes like structure. And if I just throw things off the cuff like I am right now, even in this story, she's probably really surprised with that. And you know, the next slide she might have to recover. But the point is, we learn how to navigate people. And that's what this whole philosophy, why it's so important, is about nurturing relationships and making them meaningful and thinking mindfully about these things, these small little things that sometimes we don't think about because we get caught up in our day-to-day. So that little story I was going to tell you turned into 3 minutes, and I apologize. But so gentle teaching is the pursuit of human equality. I think in that story I just told you, that's exactly what we're trying to get at. A long-term dedication and promise. So that point really just talks about there is no magic wand that just says, taps the person on the head and says, you are gentle talk today and thank you for coming. And it's over. That person, you can't do it because there's no learning, there's no nurturing, there's no anything that exists. You just can't do it. It's a long-term dedication and promise. And so when I say dedication, is it hard for me to help see through our comic book clubs? Not anymore, but it took time, it took dedication to help him feel safe in those spaces. Now he shows up every single week and I don't have to worry about him interrupting because I helped him feel welcome and he wants to be there. So I know it worked. A psychology of interdependence, something Rochelle spoke about here a second ago, is we're not an island. We're not all on an island. And though every one of you are in your specific little spots there in this camera space and they're not all connected, in our communities, we're not an island. We depend on somebody, right? Everyone depends on somebody. Whether it's I depend on my brother to come help me without even having to ask to help, fix my, garage or, help out when I need it, or whether it's knowing that I can count on this person to do this specific thing always in my office. I'm not on an island and I don't have to do it by myself. So whether it's small or big, the goal is to teach that, to work out that very Western idea that, you need to be independent. And in our community, independence is so important. If you can be independent, then you can live on your own and the government has to fork up less dollars and yada, yada, yada. I can look and psychologize that however I want. But at the end of the day, how lonely is that? It's incredibly lonely. Is rooted, and so gentle teaching is rooted in an unconditional value. This one is very hard. No matter what you do or do not do, you have value. Unconditionally, you can rip off my head and spit down my neck and kick me in the shins and do all those things. And tomorrow I'm gonna come back and we're gonna be buds, regardless of what you do or do not do. I mean, I can think of one specific example. I once upon a time gave one of the guys I was supporting, when I was supporting, a guitar case because I knew the guy needed a guitar case that was solid and would work. And I said, okay, this guitar case is really important to me. It means something to me, and I need you to return it when you are done. And I know the guy, he loved that guitar case. He took care of that guitar case. He put his stickers on regard to the guitar case. When I saw it, I cringed, but it's because I wouldn't have done that to my own guitar case, but I gave him this guitar case. And then one day he wasn't using that guitar case anymore. And I was like, shoot, what happened to the guitar case? He's like, oh, well, I gave it to somebody and they gave me a pack of smokes. And a little part of me was just super hurt because I trusted that guitar case, because I trusted that person. But in an effort to meet him where he was at, I needed to be okay. I needed to compose myself and be like, man, that sucks because I gave that to you. And you don't want to make him feel bad. But also there's a teaching moment there that he did have to hear it. He did have to learn. He did have to navigate life the same way that you and I did. So there is a teachable moment there. But the hard part is in me, in changing myself. And I value you unconditionally, no matter what, because you probably didn't know how important that was, that I gave you that guitar case. A philosophy of life. This is not a punch clock. When I leave work, I'm done. I am done gentle teaching for the day, and I put on my normal hat and I go home and I light fires. That is not how this works. It's a philosophy of life because you put that gentle teaching hat on and you just leave it on. I said the unconditionality piece was hard for people. It's just on a philosophy standpoint, I'll tell you in action, this is the hardest part for people, a philosophy of life, because the thing I do at work is the thing I also have to do at home. Mm-hmm. And that is the part that feels culty for people. And that's the part that people have criticism about. But ultimately, it's I'm trying to be a good person in my real life and meet people where they're at. I can honestly tell you is not a philosophy that that doesn't make no sense. I think it makes tons of sense. I'm going to go and meet my wife where she's at. I'm going to go meet my 2-year-old, 4-year-old child where they're at. We're not on the same level, never are. So finding a way to find that balance is so important. I'm doing so many hands like language because I'm used to doing this with people in person.
Me too.
Okay.
So what gentle teaching is not. So I know when I first was being introduced to gentle teaching, I had this assumption that it's all, sunshine, rainbows, and hugs. And Ben knows I'm not a fan of the hugs. And the idea of never saying no. And that's not what it is at all. It's all the things that Ben talked about. And just so much more. Like you said, we're just barely scratching the surface today. But when we look at what gentle teaching is not, as that first point shares, it's not a behavior modification approach where we use reward and punishment to change behaviors. And John talked about this a little bit in his video as well. I come from a background of behavior modification, and this is what we absolutely 1000% did all the time. Was we were trying to do exactly what it says, modify people's behavior. We were trying to change people's behaviors. And we would often use the things that were important to them or valued to them as a way to make those changes. So we almost weaponized those things that were important to a person. And that's not what gentle teaching is about. It's not to say that behavior modification doesn't work, because it's been shown that it does. But it works in short periods of time. It's not something that is going to be a lifelong change for someone. It's about, like Ben said, meeting people where they're at and seeing how maybe there's things that we could be adjusting to better serve someone, or, better meet someone's needs. But I think this piece also builds into that idea of that unconditional value as well. Ben talked about, I value you simply because you exist. Full stop, right? There's nothing more to that. But when we're trying to change people, we're showing that we don't value you in that moment. And so I think that's where this unconditional value piece is so important, regardless of whether it's people that, we're supporting within our work here at CORE or with my family and my friends. That unconditional value piece is just so important. Gentle teaching is also not something that is fast and easy, and Ben's talked to this too, right? All of this is going to take time. relationships take time. Relationships are going to be at the center of everything within gentle teaching. And it takes time to build relationships. Relationships also can be broken apart pretty fast too. And so, it's going to take time. It's going to take practice. It's going to take patience. And it's not easy. There's going to be some days that are harder than others. But the biggest thing I think to keep in mind here is that, kind of relating it back to our central purpose and our presence in the lives of others, we are going to do good and be good in those times that maybe aren't so good. And that's going to take time and it's going to take practice. And like Ben already alluded to as well, like this isn't just something that we do here at CORE or within your libraries. This is something that's going within the community as well. It's when you see, it's like kindness, it spreads, right? You're sharing that kindness, others are going to do the same. And it truly is, like Ben said, this also takes work. It's not easy as well. And this is sort of like the biggest one that still comes to me from, people when I'm talking with them about gentle teaching or they're finding out what we do here. It's just like, there's often an idea that gentle teaching is all about, well, we're just giving in. We're never saying no, we're giving people whatever they want. And that's not the case. Sometimes we do have to say no, right? But there's ways you can do it in a way that isn't going to be punishing them for what they're doing. But there are going to be some days where, whatever works is going to be what we're going to do. And sometimes we need to have that in order to help build a relationship at the start. But eventually, as that relationship builds, we can start to put in some of those boundaries, so to speak. I don't really want to use that word, but as relationships grow, trust is going to grow. And so, people are going to trust us in the things that we're guiding them on, or the things that we're, giving them information about. And so we can get to that point where, we are going to say no sometimes, because no is what needs to happen in that moment. Want to add?
No, like, I think it's one thing that John always says, or John used to say, and doesn't always say it anymore, was we give people what they want so that they can get what they need. And when that comes to the cookies, cakes, and candies that people were often blamed, and all it comes to the hugs that we're often blamed as just using it. No, it's not really about that. It's about, sure, man, like have the cake, have the cookies, think about your own life. If you want a Coke, you're gonna have a Coke. And it's not about saying no. There's no power struggle. It's giving people what they want. So then you can create relationship there. It's a spot. It's a moment in time. That sharing of a Coca-Cola or a Diet Coke or a Coke Zero or whatever it is that's in your hand is a moment in time where you can develop relationship. And I think that was the only thing that that's.
I think it might not be a bad idea before we get into culture, Ben. Maybe let's do a quick break, because I know I myself could use a little movement. So why don't we do like a quick 8-minute break, that way you can go grab a coffee or a water if you need, and by that point everyone will be back within the 10 minutes that normally everyone comes back. So we'll do like a quick 8-minute break. So it's I've got 1:48 right now, so if we can be back in about 8 minutes time, and then we'll keep moving on with the culture of gentleness.
All right, did you go or did I go?
I guess you'll be starting.
All right. So why a culture of gentleness? We're just going to jump back in here like we were driving a car and now we're driving again at the same speed. That's how I do things. I got to go back here. Start this bad boy again. So why a culture of gentleness? The culture of gentleness looks at the person first and not their diagnosis. So, when I get to this slide, it's just very, very self-explanatory. We don't look at the person like there's autism Ben. We look at that person like here's Ben. And I think there's a piece of that we just look, because in today's day and age, we like to label things and we like to create boundaries, and we like to say, well, you're different because of this. And yes, we're all different. And yes, we're all pretty little flowers, and we're all really important, and all of our feelings are important. But those things don't define us, and they shouldn't. And then when you think about the people we support, they definitely shouldn't. Because you can do whatever you want in your spare time. Like, I get that. If you want that to be your identity, then go ahead. But we don't start there, and we definitely don't start there with our clients, the people that we support at CORE, with our friends. And so this philosophy just this piece likes to look at that and just clear the air. A person is a person and not their diagnosis. And then gentle teaching is a long-term commitment, which we said already, to value and respect people. It's a hard decision that challenges people to do good and be good in the light of hard situations. And I read this, and I'm like, when I first read this and I first started teaching this philosophy, I thought, oh, this is all about the person that we're supporting. This is all about how to get them to do the thing we want. But it's not. This slide is very specific, and it's actually just about us. It's about how we approach situations, how we come up with the answers. It's a hard decision that challenges people to do good and be good in the light of hard stuff. Okay, so when I'm sitting there and someone's kicked me in the shin, or they've spit down my head, or whatever I said in my examples earlier, man, that sucks. And there is absolutely no easy way to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to be good right now. Someone just punched me in my face, because my fight or flight just peaked. And folks, I'm not sure what your libraries are like, but I've seen fights break out in the library before, just by attending the library on my own personal time. In those moments, when you are in that moment, I guess flight, like get out of there, and then find a way to come back if you can. And I guess I can't really tell you how to do it, but in our line of work, this is really specific to that. And if someone's doing those things or giving you a hard time, if you have to go to your car, text your partner who is on at the same time as you to support you through the situation. If you have to lock yourself in the bathroom and have a good cry, do whatever it is you have to do to come back and be good, even though that was really some real stuff that just happened. When I gave you that example about the guitar case, I mean, I just had to be able to compose myself enough to not get mad. I'm a dad, I have 2 kids. I cannot get mad when I need to. But boy, was I boiling inside. Boy, did I want to take that guitar and smash it on the sidewalk, because that guitar case actually meant a lot to me because of the person that gave it to me. So it's hard. It's not supposed to be easy. How do we come back from that? And I think this next bit is how we come back from that. I mean, I used to speak to this a little bit, but culture of gentleness challenges the status quo. I mean, just anything that we are doing for the first time challenges our own status quo, just by nature of it being different. So I feel like this is self-explanatory. So. How do we do this stuff? We're getting into the weeds now.
To me, gentle teaching is just, it's treating people the way they deserve to be treated. It's, you know, honoring and valuing that dignity and respect. And I mean, regardless of someone's ability, it doesn't mean they should be treated any differently. So I mean, I just look at it as treating people the way I want to be treated myself.
The thing I always think about and really try to focus on is using the same approaches and tools and pillars of gentle teaching in our relationships, where everyone feels safe and everyone feels valued and interconnected and has opportunities to express themselves and become engaged in the community as a whole.
Gentleness to me is, gosh, it's about all of our interactions with each other, the power that we have just by our simple presence, our way of interacting with somebody, a smile that you can share with somebody, the intentionality behind your actions, where you can actually help turn somebody's entire day and eventually possibly their life around by the power of relationship, by the power of interaction.
The words that my parents told me when I was young, how they made me the person I am today. No matter what I did growing up, whether I made a mistake, whether I did something bad, my parents were always encouraging me and telling me that I'm good. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's something I have taken with me into my career now, with the people I support, that no matter what happens in their lives, that my words help build them up and make them think of themselves in a positive light no matter what has happened.
Gentle teaching and the warmness and all that it impacts goes fully community-wide and breeds, I like to hope, something positive and compassion for those that we serve, and then leading forward to my kids and that generation, and ensuring that they have strong morals and beliefs from that also.
In a home where you're safe and secure, your life is no longer jeopardized and you feel more comfortable to be yourself and learn, and to better your life almost, I would say, when you have people around you that care, when you're in a surrounding and an environment that is nurturing to you and you feel comfortable. I think that's when you really get to, live life and you're not held back by invisible barriers.
The tool that I think resonates the most with me is the power and the significance of our eyes. Obviously that power, that tool, our moms, the people that we interact with can use that tool to let us know they're disappointed, that we've done something wrong, to make us feel kind of less than. But the real beauty of the power of our eyes is when you are able to reach out to somebody that's hurting. Just by looking at that friend across the room, you can't say a word, there's not a thing you can do to change anything about the stressors that they're going through, but that look, it's changed your heart at one point, and we have the power in us to be able to change others too. It's just so amazing, the simplicity of what we can do when we act with intention, and that's what I think is our greatest gift. There's nothing fancy, there's no equipment, it's who we are and building connections with others that help us feel connected and safe with each other, and that's why I love our eyes.
Part of your life, it's part of who you are. I've always known I wanted to do this type of work since I was in the first grade and there was a boy with autism in my class. This was it for me. This is where I was going and what I wanted to do, but I could never find my fit until I found Zay and I found gentle teaching, because I just believe in treating people with dignity and respect, and they should have a choice in there. There are equals, they're not lesser, they deserve everything that we deserve and every option in the world.
It means to me it's a movement in human rights, looking at people differently than we ever have before, and I'm a part of that, and I love that I'm doing something for this world for the better. I'm part of the change.
At core, this is not a job. We're not clients, or the folks that we serve aren't clients or consumers or customers. They're people. And I mean, I'm going to refer to the person that I'm supporting or serving as a person, because they're a whole person. I mean, whether it's John or Michael or Brandon or whomever. I mean, we see them as a person, and I'm Mike and you're Brandon. And we're here together to hang out, to do whatever it is that we're going to do today.
It's using those tools to help people feel safe and loved. And safe, what I mean by safe is not just safe physically, but I mean safe psychologically and mentally as well.
As a child grows up, sometimes their behavior isn't congruent with their value. And we have to recognize the fact that those are two very different things. And regardless of what that child does or does not do, their value never changes. That's how we actually help to raise citizens of the world. When they understand their value, they can then move toward understanding the value that they hold and the responsibility they have with other people, and recognize the value of others as well.
We have to continue to remember that all the individuals we serve are an individual first. There's a disability after that. And so CORE's gentle teaching philosophy really shows that to the community and to the individuals, that we respect them and we care, and want to show them that they are like you and me.
So, before I go any further, again, I was just waving at somebody out here in our space anyway. So if you're watching our screen and not watching that movie, I was frantically waving and trying to get someone's attention. So anyway, you're welcome for that display. Anyway.
So the next slide for sure, I think, is the slide Ben thought was coming up when he was talking about his reaction to that person, you know, what was it, kicking you in the shin, I think you were talking about.
Yeah.
So if we just want to go to the next slide, Ben, when we think about what gentle teaching is based upon, the biggest thing here is this idea of nonviolence. So, you know, Ben was talking about that idea of fight or flight. And yeah, that can be really hard not to react in certain situations, especially when, you know, it is maybe a situation where someone is being, you know, aggressive towards us, or however you want to term it. It can be hard just to kind of, you know, take that minute, take a breath before you react. But within gentle teaching, one of the things that we think is really important is that, you know, we reject the use of restraints, whether that's physical restraints, you know, communication restraints, whatever it might look like. And the reason being, it does a lot of damage to relationships. The moment that you hold someone back physically, you're doing damage to that relationship. You're restricting that person, possibly hurting that person, right? So, you know, it's really hard to be gentle and have that, you know, continue on with that philosophy of gentle teaching if we're not letting a person be who they are. It's not to say put yourself in harm's way, right? But it's how can we best support this person? What can we do to best support this person in a time where clearly they're struggling? When we think back to this idea of nonviolence as well, we're not yelling and screaming at the person. So I remember growing up, and if someone raised their voice at me, I probably raised my voice in response to them, right? And that's not what we're doing here either. Again, when we're yelling, when we're screaming at folks, we are taking away value from people. Unless it's the Saskatchewan Rough Riders and our defense isn't showing up, then yell and scream all you want. But, you know, the moment we start to raise our voice at someone, they're going to see us in a very different light, and they're going to see how we're seeing them in that moment. So, you know, that retaliation isn't something that we want to do. And we're not placing ourselves in an authoritative position. So yes, I'm in an opportunity where, you know, I get to support people, or I get to help people, but it doesn't mean that I get to use that fact as something to hang over them of like, well, because you need help means I'm a better person than you, and I'm going to make you feel this big for it. You know, when we need to support people, they need support. Like, it's plain and simple. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. And as I'd mentioned, this idea of retaliation, right? Or tit for tat, or however you want to phrase it, because you did it to me, I'm going to do it to you. That's going to do nothing to build relationship. And like we've talked about, gentle teaching is so rooted in relationship building. So the moment we start to retaliate, we're breaking that relationship as well. And then this one can be hard too. This idea of not using body language or our physical size to intimidate. A lot of people can't control this. If you're a tall person, you can't control that, right? But it's how you use your body. We can be aware, like we talked about, we're very intentional in things that we're doing within gentle teaching. The same can be said for this piece, right? If you're a taller person, maybe it's a matter of kneeling down to like, or, you know, kind of crouching down to speak to someone, especially if they're sitting in a chair of some sort, right? Or, you know, we're not using our size to dominate or make people feel less. I know for myself, I've worked at other agencies in the past where this was absolutely something that I saw staff do when we were supporting youth. And you would absolutely see youth just like shrink in size almost, because that person who is supposed to be supporting them was absolutely using their size as a way to intimidate and go to that idea of I'm an authority over you. So this idea of retaliation, using your size, none of that is going to help to build relationships at all within that philosophy of gentle teaching.
Just as a fun side note, in teaching, one of like the classroom management strategies that they teach you is just by being present when the person's like, think about when you're sitting in your desk and you're talking to your friend. If your teacher walked over to you and even just was near you, you'd
Yeah.
stop talking.
Yep.
It's just and I mean, me being 6'1" and almost 250, I'm like, people are like, whoa, he's coming. Oh boy. Sorry about that. So it's based on culture of warmth. And so what is that? What is a culture of warmth? Places the value of a person and the well-being at the core of caregiving. So it does not matter what I set out to do today. It does not matter what our plans were, what we're doing, what is the rush is often the question we would ask in these scenarios. Why do I need to do this right now? So you place the value of the person at the center of what's happening. So if we're having a difficult moment, why do I have to complete said objective? Why do I have to do this thing when this person is feeling so unsafe right now? Individuals and supports are seen as equals. Obviously, we're walking with, not behind, not in front, we're walking with. I mean, I guess the hope is that eventually we're walking behind, so the person that we're supporting can, is taking the steering wheel of their own car and driving their own life. But at the end of the day, we start with walking with. A focus on companionship and community, again, takes us right back to our central purpose there. Companionship. What is companionship? Who are these people? Who is this person to companion with? Can he or she be a companion with me? Or do they have companionship with their mom, their family? And then who is the community? Who is their community that makes them feel safe, that helps them feel like they belong? Community isn't a place, though we are in the community, as in libraries or in the homes that we support in. Community is obviously, yes, it is a place, but we're not talking about the place that is a community. We're talking about where this person feels a sense of belonging, and where they feel warm. Supports act in patience and with compassion during interactions that are both positive and less desirable. Pretty self-explanatory there. It goes right back to that being good in the scenarios that aren't always so easy to be good in, and all people are nurtured. So it's not just a philosophy that we do here in these walls, or it's something that we take on the road with us everywhere we go. On that.
And then just to continue with this idea of that gentle cultureness coming from or including that idea of warmth. And I think we've talked about a lot of these already kind of throughout things, but we're having calm reactions to violence, because that can happen, right? And like we just previously talked about, sometimes it's a matter of taking that breath before we react to see what's really actually needed in that situation. Because a lot of times, if we react, we escalate things a little bit too, right? So if we can just kind of take that moment to have that breath, and like Ben had talked about earlier, maybe it's stepping away for a minute, right? Going to the washroom or going out to your car. Those are all ways that we aren't engaging or retaliating in that violence that we might experience. We've talked about this a little bit too, but a place where all people are welcome. And I'm sure this is something that, you guys want within your libraries as well. And the work that we do, we're often supporting in people's homes, but the big thing that I think is important here for us to remember too is the people that are included in this idea of people here aren't just the people that we serve, but it's their families as well. It's their friends as well, right? I think often, in times where, the work that we tend to do, families get put aside a lot, and they aren't considered, to be important in that person's life, because maybe they're not living with their family anymore, but they are. And so what community looks like for people that we talked about earlier, right? This is where this piece comes in again. We've talked a lot about this idea of intentional purpose, right? We're doing what we have to do because we want to see growth in everyone, right? So, we're hoping to see some change in the both of us, depending on what we're doing. We talked about this idea of interdependence, right? So being able to do things together. Ben would probably be the first to say, if he was talking about me, I do strive to be a very independent person. It is an important value for myself. However, if you don't have people to share that with, it's tough, right? Like, it's great that you can do things, but like Ben said, if you can't share that with people, it's going to be very lonely. And so, you know, creating that warmth that people want to be together and do things together, I think is really important. And then this idea that, you know, we want people to know they're important. We want people to know that they are somebody. And we get to show people that in a lot of different ways. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about our tools, but this is what people need to know. We've talked about that idea of unconditional value, and that I value you regardless of what you do and do not do. This is the same message. You are somebody, you are important. You know, let's be here together. And then one of the things that, again, this might be a little more geared to the type of care that we provide, but I think is still important, is we want people to be in their homes and it feel like a home. Or we want people to be in spaces that they feel comfortable in, to feel comfortable in. And that can be, you know, as simple as having artwork that they've done for themselves on their walls, right? Or, you know, getting to choose paint colors, or getting to go into a space where, you know what, there is no expectations of me in this space. I can just simply be here and I'm accepted for who I am. So I think those are all important things too, when we're thinking about what that culture of gentleness might include.
Rochelle, as you're just speaking there, I just thought, like, there's a huge shift right now happening with museums, with like galleries, with, I guess, maybe even libraries. I'm not too sure, but like, a house feels like a home. How does that translate to all those spaces?
Yes.
Is it reflective of the people who frequent them? And I think one of the reasons why museums and small spaces are not as prevalent and as big as they used to, we'll say, is because those museums are no longer a reflection of the people that occupy them, that go there. They're a reflection of people that used to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of years ago, 50 years ago, 6 years, any time amount is enough. Are the places we frequent reflective of where of the people that frequent them? And I think that's a great question when you're thinking about your home. Why would people want to go to my home when I live there? Like, it's a good question. And then you think about museums. Think about art galleries, think about the library. If people can't find books that relate to them in those libraries, why would they go to the library? I mean, I don't know that answer, but I think, like I said, I just came up with this thought right now, but I feel like that it has merit. I feel like people should see themselves in those spaces, because why would they want to go to them?
Yeah.
Anyway. So, getting back to our central purpose a little bit, gentle teaching is based upon unconditional value, respect, acceptance, honor, dignity, and love. And all of those words describe the basis, the root function of being with somebody. I value you because you exist. I respect you because you exist. I accept you because you exist. I mean, love is often thrown into our tools and our philosophy, and it's a distancing word for some folks, and I understand why. The word love has connotations that are like, I love you, I'm going to be with you forever. I love my wife, but I should not love my client, and so I understand that. But unconditional, all these words are interchangeable in themselves. Based upon unconditional value is the same as unconditional respect. It's the same as unconditional acceptance. And so you can throw whatever one of those main words, and maybe you can think of some others in there, but the base point is unconditionality. No matter what you do, I value you. And I think one of the things you're going to see even in this slide or this presentation is the word value and love interchangeably being used, because you could say when John created gentle teaching, he used the word love because he was an older man, and that's one of the words that he just liked to use. But as we find ourselves wading into the waters with museums, with libraries, with other organizations, ministry, like the Ministry of Social Services, where even in our own backyard here, the word love is very distancing. You're not supposed to love your client. So then what are words that we can use outside of that?
And that brings us into our pillars of gentle teaching, which we have 4 of. So, and we've talked about these a little bit already throughout the day, but the first one that we always talk about is this to feel safe. And Moriana touched on it a little bit in one of the videos that we had shown, but it was, you know, not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, psychologically safe. And again, if I was to ask each and every one of you what safe looks like or feels like, or how you would define it, each of you is going to have a different answer, right? But it's very important. And I know we talk about our pillars as the 4 pillars, but I truly believe this one and the one to follow are the 2 biggest pillars in my mind anyways,
100%.
that need to be there. You know, if I'm going to be with people, I want to feel safe. I want to feel accepted. But if I don't feel safe, I'm going to be a little guarded myself. And so, I'm also going to, though, have to be open to sharing what safe looks like for me or what it means for me, because Ben can't be expected to know what safe looks like for me. And safe might change on a day-to-day basis for folks too, right? So that's, I think, something that is really important within gentle teaching is we're being present with the people that we're with to know what that person needs in that moment. And I think the first time you start to see any sort of pullback maybe from someone, or resistance, or maybe, you know, maybe escalation, for, again, not the greatest word to use, but those are happening because safety is starting to feel challenged by someone. And, you know, you could have known someone for the, you know, last 15 years, but something might have happened to question that or put that safety at risk. And that's when we're going to start to see things happening for folks. We might, like I said, see them pulling away, maybe becoming a bit more, you know, argumentative, whatever that might look like. But this is, I think, the biggest pillar that we need to take time to build, because people aren't going to feel safe immediately either. Relationships take time. This feeling of safety is going to take time. But once I feel safe with someone, I am much more willing to be in a space with that person, to listen to that person, to take advice from that person, and just talk with that person when I know I can feel safe and trusted with them.
The only thing I would add is one of the most important things to remember about safe is it takes a millisecond to break safe. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you.
Yep.
Sometimes that's affected by external factors, and then it rolls into you. They come to you because you're safe. And sometimes that looks like chaos for you. But yeah, it's really important to remember that piece of safety.
And I think too, is safety, you could, like that piece that you said, Ben, where they might come to you as their safe person. You might not even be aware that you're that safe person for someone, right? Or maybe this is someone that, you know, has maybe come in and used your library, you know, they stop in once a day or once a week kind of thing. You don't really know who they are, but this is that place where they feel safe. Eventually, when something happens, you're going to know that you're that safe space for them as well.
So the second of the pillars is safe, or is valued. And I always talk about this when I think about my own real-time relationships. And I think about safe plus valued, this unofficial equation that exists, but safe plus valued equals trust. And if you think about a relationship, think about any of your relationships, and then think about the ones that are like uneasy for you, okay? Picture that person that is with. Think about whether you feel safe with that person, and then think about whether you feel valued by that person. Sometimes neither of those things exist, and you're just thrust into this person's life, and you don't know why you're in a relationship, whether it be romantic or just because that you work with the person or something. But if you feel any sort of uneasy waters, let's say, safe plus loved or safe plus valued is affected by that, and it is affecting that. And when you think safe plus valued equals trust, this unofficial, official equation that I like to talk about, trust is like it. Both of those together will equal that trust. But if one isn't present, you will know that there's going to be always uneasy feelings. And this is how what I meant by it is so applicable to us as people, just in general. I think about people that I've had difficult times with, that I'm still in difficult times with, and there's something that isn't working. And it's one of those two factors. And then I think, okay, do I want to hang out with them? Well, no, I don't. They're often the people I want to duck out from, or they're often the people because I don't feel safe or I don't feel loved. I think about how I project those things to those people as well, right? So valued, what is valued? Valued is taking interest in the things that, any of the things that these people bring to you. It's finding value because you exist. Oh, you love video games? That's amazing. That's incredible. Oh, you love art or long walks on the beach? Those are incredible things. There's value in that. And yeah, I mean, I don't really have to color it in, but I always just think about a story that later on I could share about tea. And tea is the name of not just the drink tea. Tea is a person who I met because I started supporting her, but also she stuck around because she felt these things, safe plus valued. And then she thrived in her environments because of safe plus valued equals trust, and then started to take control of her life in a very positive way. I would say in my lifespan, the gold star, because she experienced and was able to go through all of these pillars and feel them herself. So anyway, little segue there, but safe plus valued. No, loving, there it is. Whoops, hasn't made it out yet.
You know, Ben talks about this idea of an equation, right? Of safe and valued equals trust. And I think if safe and valued aren't happening, people can't become more loving. As much as I'm not a fan of the word love myself, we get to see this in more ways than we realized. This idea of becoming more loving is what we hope, not us necessarily becoming more loving, but those that we get to engage with, those that we get to interact with. It's those little almost acts of kindness, if you kind of think of it that way. So, you know, when I talk about this with some of our employees, sometimes we talk about, you know, this idea of becoming more loving is the little gestures that they start to show us. Because it's one thing when I come into work every day and I can see my colleagues and I'm like, hi, Ben, how's your day? How are you going? Simple questions that we ask all the time. Do we always necessarily listen for the answer, the true answer? Not always. Do we always give the true answer? Not always either. But I think, you know, those are things that society speaking, we're taught that, you know, when you see someone at the start of the day, greet them, say hi, ask how they are. And you just do it because it's habit and it's routine. But where I've seen this shift for the people that I have the opportunity to engage with, to support, is, you know, when I've been away and I come to that home or they come here to our office and I see them and they're the ones to initiate that conversation and say, how are you today, Rochelle? Or if they knew I was away, how are you? Or I'm just thinking of two girls in particular that I supported in the past. They continue to ask me how my family members are. And that's a way of them showing they are becoming more loving, because it's not just about them. They want to know about you. They want to know what's going on for you. And I think that's, you know, one of the coolest things that I've been able to experience is seeing this happening, because, you know, as an agency that supports others and, you know, similar to, I don't want to assume, but within the libraries where you guys are engaging with consumers every day, and that's just what you do. But when you start to see those customers coming in and they're sticking around to chat with you, they're asking you about, you know, things that you're experiencing, that you've done, that you've experienced, this is them becoming more loving. I always joke with our teams that one of the gals we support here, I joke that her love language is cheesies and root beer. And I remember when I first started supporting her on my own, she got up one day and we were in the living room and she went to the kitchen and I could hear her and I was like, should I go check on her? I don't know. She came back out to the living room with a bowl of cheesies and a glass of root beer to share with me. And that was huge, because to her, those are two things that are very, very important in her life. And so for her to share that was just like, it was a really cool feeling and like melted my cold little black heart, because, you know, those were important things, but that was her way of showing I feel safe, I feel valued. I want us to be able to do things together.
Yeah, and there's actually nothing I need to add to that. That's perfect. But if I go back to this original slide.
I hope no one has motion sickness.
Yeah, you're welcome. When I said loving and valued kind of are interchangeable in all of this, because they're in this list and we're using it that way. I will say go back to these, close your eyes if you have to, I'm gonna keep two more. To feel loved, to feel valued, okay? But then to show valuing to you, okay? Root beer and cheesies in your lap because that person is valuing you. And what does that look like? It's different for everybody, but for that person, valuing was sharing those cheesies and that root beer with you. So they ask you about your family because they value you, okay? And they're valuing you in the same way that you taught and nurtured value to them. Last of the pillars is to become engaged. And then I'm going to wrap it all up with a cute little story that goes so well because I made it so, but it's actually awesome. So to become more engaged, this is grabbing the steering wheel of your life and driving that car because you can, and because you have agency to do that. And because the people around you have helped you get to the point where you can do those things and feel confident doing those things. It's not engaged. It's not always engaged in everything you do, but it's engaged in, I cleaned my room today. And sometimes that's the best you can ask for. But sometimes it's in, I am now going to go and participate in this activity that I love without you because I love doing it. And though you can't make it this week, I love it that much that I'm still just going to go and be part of that community and engage in it. That's engaged. Grabbing the steering wheel of your life, driving that car. And I always wrap this up with a little story because I supported a gal who, her name was T, and I remember the first time I ever went to her house, went to Buzz. She lived in an apartment. We have time for this story? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. We just have tools next, so we're good. I went to her apartment and buzzed, and she's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, hey, my name is Ben. I'm here to support you. She was like, oh, hey, Ben, and was really excited to let me up, but then didn't ever buzz me in. And I sat there and I buzzed again. And then she never answered the buzzer that time again because she knew it was me. She was afraid. She did not feel safe with me. I'm a grown man, and the decided upon time that I was coming to support her was 6 p.m. on a Tuesday night. And you know, I mean, in the wintertime, it's dark. This man is here anyway, regardless. She did not feel safe with me. The second time I went to support her, and I'm just for effect, I'm just going to go all the way through these slides again, just to give everyone a little bit more motion sickness.
Gravel.
Yeah. But second time I went to support her, she's like, hey, and I was like, hey, it's Ben. And she's just like, oh, hey, Ben, sorry, just a minute. And then she fumbled around with the phone, and then the door never opened again. And I'm not going to lie, folks, I snuck in when someone else snuck into that apartment. They opened the door and I breached all safety. Now, I'm going to be honest, I thought this was my job. Now, it wasn't, but I got to her apartment. I knew where it was. I knocked. She knew I was there. She knew I was there to hang out. And I had no intention of going into her actual domicile, behind the door. But when I knocked, she's like, hey, Ben. And she knew it was me. But as soon as she opened the door, she opened it and she left the chain on, and she's like, she stuck a pentagram out the door. And she was just like, what is your religion and what do you believe in? And I was just like, this is a weird way to meet me again. But to her, it was super important. Somewhere along the line, something having to do with religion or whatever had isolated her to the point where she just didn't want to interact with me because I was probably going to judge her for it, or I was probably going to come down on her for it. And when I say, like, I just literally looked at her and I'm like, I kind of put my own beliefs, because obviously Christian values and atheist values are just like, oh, what's going on? I just like, honestly, man, I don't have anything to bring to this conversation. I don't believe in much. I just believe in the fact that I'm here to support you today. And if you want that support, awesome. If you don't, I'll go home. And she just, like, at that moment, the latch came open. And that was the first time that I felt that maybe she felt safe with me. Now, this wasn't the first time we ever met. I know that'd be really weird if this is the first time we ever saw each other. We met each other at the offices where she interacted with me, and we talked about art because I knew that was a common thread. So that was great. She knew who I was. She knew I painted, and she knew that I'm supposed to be safe by proxy of being part of an agency that says, okay, you are a support, and I kind of am supposed to trust you. Okay. But we're moving on. Oops, not to the beginning. Again, grab all folks. So how did I help her feel valued? For so long, this person, this human being, was made to feel like they didn't belong. She told me stories in the time that we were together that she, when she was going to high school, which was a high school here in Regina, she would spend time in the hallway without going to class, and people would mock her, and her classrooms were in the deep dark hallway that nobody went down, because that was the classroom that the people who needed extra help went down. And she hung out there and people made fun of her. And she got to the point where she was like, decided to take on new identity because she didn't want to be part of that society, part of that group of people. She started becoming gothic and would wear dark makeup. And at least this way, and she told me this, at least this way, if people didn't want to talk to her, they had a reason to, because they knew by looking at her, she didn't want to talk to them. And I remember people still bugged her. She still was bothered, to the point where she went and she became friends, quote unquote friends, with the librarian at her school. So librarians, check one. But she went and became friends with the librarian because that was the only place she felt safe. Okay, so her values, super important to her. Family didn't support them because they weren't the same Catholic values that her mom and dad were raising her with. Gothic values that she was now adopting to try and, push people away. No one liked them, and no, that's scary. And at the time when you could dress goth like and push people away or make people feel like they should be edgy around you, that was important to her, to push people away. So what did I do when I walked into that house and to help her feel valued? I knew the first thing she ever did was she shoved a pentagram in my face. So I knew that I needed to make her feel good about just being comfortable in her own skin, because she didn't. She felt like, oh man, I need to push this person away or test them. I need to test them and let them know that if you don't like it, I'm going to push you down the stairs. Something that she said to me, by the way. And I was like, man, believe whatever you want to believe. You're a human being. I'm not here to tell you what to believe in. I'm not here to tell you not to play video games till 2 a.m. I'm not here to tell you you can't drink vodka coolers at 2 a.m. while you do that because you got to get up and do your job. I needed to share, I didn't share vodka coolers, by the way, but I needed to share that figurative Coca-Cola with her. Coke's cake and candy, going back to that original idea. I needed to share that Coke and be okay with the human being that she was just because she existed. I needed to place value on who she was and her religion because it was super important to her to feel valued in that moment. So I did. And that went on for that feeling out went on for 2-3 months. I'd come every Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. and we'd talk video games and we'd talk her religion. We'd talk about things like, I want to be able to sleep in a coffin bed because it's edgy, and I want to, and this is the weirdest possible subject matter ever. And I just honored it. I said, that's cool. I would prefer if you did that without a coffin lid and just sleep in that coffin shaped bed, but it honored how important those things were to her. Honored the fact that, man, that must have been really hard that you and your family didn't see eye to eye because they had strong Catholic values and you didn't know what you wanted, so you swung the other way in that pendulum. Honored those things, valued them because she exists. And honestly, I just always thought about doing that development of trust as being so important, because I remember the day that I showed up, and all the while I'm like, man, we should go out for coffee into a public space. So I'm not saying like this guy hanging out in your apartment from 6 to 8 p.m. anymore. I wanted to get out of there. And the goal for me, when I was told to start supporting this gal, was to get her out of her home and just to do regular day things. Let's go out for coffee. So I knew she liked comic books. That was an entryway. I said, okay, let's go out for comic books. And one day she finally said yes. So we went to Chapters and I bought her the most horrific looking drink of all time, that I'm sure she was testing me in this to see if I'd buy this $12 drink for her, which was like a Java chip with extra chips, extra whip, double espresso. I was just like, this is going to be so gross as I bought it. And then I bought myself my caramel macchiato. and paid $20 for these 2 gross drinks. And we went and we looked at comic books together. And the whole time she said, Ben, I'm starting to go black, and I'm starting to get really anxious, and can we just go somewhere else? And I'm like, okay, how can I stretch this person to get to the next seat where we can sit and just read this comic book that we were going to go and read at chapters together? And slowly but surely, then we started grocery shopping, and then we started going out on the regular and wanting to. Now let's skip forward a couple months, maybe a year. I started a comic book club at Comic Readers Downtown. And sure enough, I invited T to come and join me at that comic book club. Sure enough, if I value her and I'm hanging out with people that I value, I would never introduce her to somebody who is so scary that she would feel like she didn't belong. So she trusted me. Safe plus valued equals trust. And she came to comic book club. And in comic book club, she thrived. She blew up. It was so good to watch her be around people. Sure, for sure. The first day that we went to comic book club, she's like, I'm probably not going to read. I don't feel comfortable reading in front of people. Every excuse under the roof. So if you've ever been to Comic Readers Downtown, it's a bunch of tables in the back room, and there's like Baldur's Gate and magic stuff all over the place. And she sat as far as she possibly could away from me at comic book club. And we just did comic book club as we would. Everyone's doing the table read, everyone's making voices, and it was the voices that brought her in. And I remember she was just like, she had a comic and she was reading by herself, following along. And then she read for one of the female characters, and she did this like awesome Russian accent. And I was like, she's like, "Do not come near me." And I'll never forget how hardcore it sounded. And I was just like, it came out of nowhere. And I couldn't write a better story than this. And at that moment, I was like, she's now feeling safe with these people, because obviously I wouldn't introduce her to somebody who's feeling who she should feel unsafe with. So obviously by proxy, these people must be safe too. So let's move on. 1 week, I got sick. Let's call it COVID. I got COVID, and T was now had to go to comic book club by herself. Sure enough, T wouldn't go to comic book club by herself. But as push comes to shove, as you'd hope something would happen, she went to comic book club by herself because I'm just going to jump back, felt safe enough to do that. Okay. She thrived. She took the bus by herself, something I didn't even know she could do. She took the bus. She went to comic readers by herself. She was fine with the other facilitator being there. She was great with all the folks. I don't know why I even questioned it, but it was fine. She didn't worry about it. And then the next week, when I was COVID free, we went to comic book club again. And I went to pick her up like I always did. And I pull up in front of her house. And she comes down and she's got a bag with her, like she always did. And instead of the normal scent she would bring into my car, today it smelled like cookies. And she just said to me, she's like, "Ben, I don't know if it's okay, but I don't know if anyone has allergies, but do you think it's okay that I cook chocolate chip cookies for everybody?" And I was just like, well, yeah, why would you do that though? Like, why? And she was just like, because everyone was so nice to me last week, and I just want to show them that how awesome they were, and I just want to thank them. And I'm like, you could just say thank you, but for sure, bring those chocolate chip cookies. And sure enough, they're just like those Pillsbury ones that she just cut like the lines. But man, holy man, that was so meaningful, and it was so important for her to be able to do that, because she then felt valued by all those people that she wanted to show value to them. And I honestly, I'm sitting here and I'm describing to you one of the greatest gold star stories that I actually have from this philosophy, but man, is it ever meaningful, because not only did she go through that entire journey, she also skipped through these last two pillars, loved and engaged, or valued and engaged, without me even needing to drag her into it. She did it by herself, and it's because she felt safe to do it. I'm going to skip to tools.
Well, and I think one of the things to keep in mind in regards to the pillars is, yeah, it's great that T got there, and especially got there on her own.
Heck yeah.
But at any point, people could go right back to needing that pillar of safety fulfilled. at any point. Like I said, whether you've known them for 10 years or 10 minutes, as soon as one of those is challenged, they're going to go back to that first one. And that's where we sometimes maybe see, you know, interactions change. And, you know, like I said before, pulling away, maybe, you know, becoming, you know, argumentative, whatever that might look. But when any of those pillars are challenged, more often than not, we're going back to that pillar of safety and starting from there again.
100%. Like all it would have taken was somebody to be like, yo, that was the dumbest voice I ever heard.
Yeah.
And they would have just slapped right back.
Yeah. So then we go into our tools. Do we want to break again, or do you want to just keep going?
Tools are our last step.
Okay.
I think let's just push through.
Okay, we'll just keep tracking then. So tools, 4 tools within gentle teaching. There is nothing fancy about these tools. There's nothing that you know you need to go out and buy for these tools. These are all things that we have with us. And I'm going to kind of give a blanket statement about the tools. Each one of the tools that we have, that we talk about within gentle teaching, have the ability to absolutely build people up, to make them, you know, reach their fullest potential, live their most meaningful lives. But these tools can also just as easily tear someone down. So I think that's, you know, I think is something that's really important that we think about when we talk about our tools, and how we use them. And like we talked about this whole idea of intentionality. We need to be intentional. We need to think about how we're using our tools, why we're using our tools, and be genuine with that.
Oh, pardon me. Yeah.
So the first tool that we tend to typically talk about, and I
always forget.
The biggest picture in the world, I hope we're changing it when we update this, but is our hands. Again, nothing magical, nothing, you know, like I said, we have to go out and buy. We all have these, right? And I don't know if you guys can see, but I tend to use my hands a lot when I speak, which can, again, something I need to be aware of when I'm around people, because I don't necessarily always know people's experiences with hands. And so it's a matter of, you know, trying to be aware of what am I doing with my hands. Often when I facilitate, I will try and have some sort of fidget in my hand, so I am not talking with my hands, but my French often comes out and I talk with my hands. Or it's, you know, when I'm supporting folks or with other folks, maybe it's a matter of I keep my hands in my pockets or, you know, behind my back, so I'm not you know, using them in a way that they're not sure what I intend to do with them. So I'm going to let the video talk a bit more to what our hands can really do.
I think our hands are an important tool because we can convey so many things with our hands and our touch. It's something where, you know, you can give someone a handshake, a high five, a pat on the back, a hug. It can convey so many things, you know, that you're proud of someone, that you're safe with them, that they're safe with you. Love, caring, all those things can be conveyed with our hands. It's something where, I guess in society, that touch is something that's not always easily accepted, but it's something that everyone needs and something that's important in everyone's life. If you look at anyone, you know, sometimes when you have that rough day, just giving someone a hug is all they need to feel better and to, you know, go to bed and think I can get up in the morning and I can go on and everything's okay. People still care about me. So that's something that's instilled in us from when we're young, and hopefully everyone's had that in their time.
Using my hands to communicate with the person, that I'm not a threat to them. Having grown up myself, there has been a lot of fear associated with hands. And so for me, it was particularly impactful that the person that I'm approaching does feel safe, that I'm not going to use my hands to take away their power, that the touch that I use, what I give to them, is actually my power to them, to help them feel empowered and that they are important in the world.
I think touch is a very big important part of what we do. A lot of our individuals have come from backgrounds that touch was always used against them in a negative way, and I can help them see that it's okay to have somebody touch you. A hug doesn't have an ulterior motive. A pat on the back isn't going to be followed by something that's going to hurt them. It's a way to help bring a feeling of their sense of self-worth and self-love back as well.
Touch is very important when a person feels nervous or is unsure, and just that little nudge on the shoulder to show them that, okay, everything's going to be okay. I mean, that speaks a whole bunch to that person.
Sometimes there's nothing you can say, and when we're using touch effectively, it affects our presence, it affects our eyes, it goes beyond our words, and it is a way that we can connect with someone no matter what is happening and what situations are going on.
You know, there's not a whole lot more that I typically add on to this because I feel the video does such a good job of, you know, highlighting the importance of our hands or touch, however you want to refer to it. But again, the big thing I think for myself that I just try and always kind of remember is that, like, you don't know what people have experienced, right? You're not going to necessarily know everyone that you engage with, right? Especially, you know, in the opportunity that I you know, can assume that you guys might be in, where you're a library, like someone might come into your doors for the first time, and you know, you don't know their story. And so just being mindful of how we are using our hands. And, you know, sometimes it's just the simple, like, you know, hand on the shoulder that someone might need to experience, or, you know, if we're thinking of it in touch in general. And you know, there's a gentleman here that we support at CORE that he loves to give hugs to everyone that he sees, and that's not my jam. There's a select few that know that they can hug me, but rather than making him feel any worse for it, right, or being like, no, I don't want hugs, I don't want to give that to you, when I start seeing him come in for that hug, I'll be like, hey Sam, how are you? And I bring my hand up as if I'm gonna high five him, and it goes right into a high five instead of a hug. And we're still getting that touch, right? We're still getting that interaction. But both of us are feeling comfortable still in that moment, because my boundaries aren't being pressed, but he's still getting that physical touch that he's looking for as well. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's good. You did well with them.
So then the next tool that we talk about is our eyes. And again, it sounds cheesy, and I think we even talk about the video, but they truly are the window to the soul, right? Our eyes can tell a lot about how we're feeling, about what we're experiencing. And I think we probably all got to experience that over the last, 3 years, when we couldn't see the faces that were behind our masks. It was our eyes that were doing a lot of the speaking for us. And so, again, I'll let the video speak to it, but eyes go a long way as well.
One of the important things to me are just using your eyes. I think so many people say it's the windows to the soul and that kind of thing. And I think it's really true. When someone's offering you an apology, you can totally tell how genuine and heartfelt it is just by looking in your eyes. And it's a really quick way to empower somebody across the room. You can offer a wink and celebrate those moments, or I feel you, I hear you, good job, and things like that. So I think the eyes can be a very powerful tool in passing on your feelings of genuine and careness and keeping things authentic and real.
The eyes strike a chord with me because you cannot fake how your eyes look. People can read into your intentions very clearly, even if your presence and your words are really gentle, but your eyes are harsh, it means nothing. So that is a tool that I find the hardest, because your intention has to be absolutely heartfelt in order to be seen through your eyes.
The young guy that I get to serve and support every day, he is very keen and very perceptive on a person's body language, and that includes the use of your eyes. And so there have been times where he's kind of looked at me and said, well, why don't you just stop staring at me? And I've had to sit back and reflect and say, oh, you know, what message is he getting? Maybe my body language is relaxed, maybe I'm just sitting there chill, but maybe my eyes are saying something different.
You can see what you're doing with your hands, you can hear what you're doing with your words, you can see what you're doing with your presence, but you can't see what you're doing with your eyes. So you really have to make a concerted effort to try and think of what your eyes are telling the person you're supporting. Really ask yourself the question, like, what are my eyes telling this person right now?
This is the most difficult one for us to be aware of unless we have a mirror behind the person that we're supporting. We don't see what our face is telling that person. And if we have anything less than our full attention, our full alertness in the presence of the person, if our thoughts are drifting to other responsibilities or problems or concerns or worries about this encounter, that's going to be reflected in our face and in our eyes. So we have to be constantly attuned to what is my face telling this person? What are they seeing that either confirms safe and love or contradicts safe and love?
I think eyes, the other thing that we don't really talk about within that video, but I think is important to talk about too, though, is, you know, we talk about the importance of maintaining eye contact, or, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I think of, you know, in the past with folks that I've supported, that was what we like drilled into them, is you need to look at someone when you're speaking with them. But, you know, the landscape of, you know, Canada itself is changing. And I think it's also important to be aware of, you know, eye contact in some cultures too has different meanings as well. So and I'm not saying we need to know every culture and what their practices and beliefs are, but just to be aware that, you know, if someone maybe isn't maintaining eye contact, you know, there could be a reason, right? It could be safety is being challenged. It could be, you know, cultural beliefs or practices. So just something to be aware of as well too, but just to know that our eyes, you know, have the ability to speak so much more than our body or our words can say.
I mean, I remember being learning to do this training with our, at the time, director and now CEO Michael Lavis, and I remember I said something that I thought, you know, this is gonna really hit, and he like just did this like slight, and for those of you who are watching our screen and can even see my face, he did this one thing that I'll never forget, and it's just this, and he raised one eyebrow really fast, like, what? And I'll never forget it, because in that moment I became so unconfident. And part of that's about me as a human being who is a little unconfident, but think about that body language that you might, you know, send out to the world just by accident. It's so hard and it's so easy to overtake that scenario, right? And so, yeah, just really important to remember. Transitioning into our words. So our words, as Michael would always say, have the power to bring somebody up and tear somebody down. And it's so true. I mean, I think about words and they stick with you. If you think about the analogy of like a piece of wood and hammer and nails, if you were a piece of wood and I say mean things to you and I hammer those mean words into you, those mean words that are the nails, and then I try to take them back. Oh, I shouldn't have said those mean things. So I'm going to take the hammer and turn it around and start pulling those nails out. You've probably heard this analogy before, but what are left? What's left in those places you hammered those mean nails in? What's left there? It's just holes. So think about that before you speak. Think about that before you say something that you don't mean, but also think about that when you're just in a conference room, sitting with people. Do I really want to go off right now? Do I really want to say this thing that might make somebody not feel great? And I think about, like, when I think about words, I think about the languages, the language that we use with people as well. At CORE, we have, and I'll just slightly just touch on it very briefly, but we have a different way to speak. Like the people we support aren't, and it's very cumbersome when you talk about it, but they're not individuals. They're people, they're names. They are John. They're not that person. If you go back all the way to the beginning of our slideshow, they're not all the folks with autism. They are John, and we're going to go to John's house. And there's this like really like interesting push to name homes in our industry and what we do and like the work that we do. And so frequently like, okay, so you're going out to Macheri house or whatever, and no, we're going to John's house. And that's the way that we just choose to use words a little bit differently here. And then it also comes into like, think about something, I'm not going to go with it. It's just about being person-centered in all of this, trying to make this apply to you as well, and not going the same route as I would with the people in our organization. But being person-centered as you're using the words. And sometimes what's okay for you is not okay for someone else. And just being open to that kind of feedback, but knowing very well that, you know, your words have so much impact.
So much power with language.
Anything you want to touch on?
No.
So these are our words.
I think that we use our words on an everyday basis in interacting with the individuals that we support and the people we support with. And the way we use them can either really build someone's self-esteem and build them up into fulfilling who they want to be, or it can knock them down. Your tone of voice is really, really crucial. Often more times than not, it's more important than the words you're actually using.
Using gentle words are so important because everybody wants to know that somebody loves them and somebody cares about them. And just being able to say that to somebody and saying I love you and I care about you and giving a compliment makes everyone feel great.
It's maybe not so much what we say, but how we say it. So our words are always soft, the tone is uplifting. When a mother comforts a crying baby, the baby doesn't understand the words that are said, but understands the love and the warmth in those words.
I think we need to be mindful of the words that we use. Our words should feel like you're hugging somebody and make them feel good.
The magic of our words as a tool is that it engineers and it modifies the use of all of our other tools. The kind things that we say, in fact, actually modify our tone of voice and the rhythm of our speech. It's very difficult to say to somebody, I care unconditionally about you in a harsh tone with any authenticity. Our kind words make our words soft. In addition to that, the things that we say also affect our facial expressions, the way that we look at a person, and our whole image that we present to the person. And they even affect our presence, our posture, our proximity to the person, the degree to which we are relaxed. And so that if we're effective in using our words as a tool, we make all of the use of our other tools even more effective.
Those are our words. No.
There you go.
All right. And so we have this gentle language slide that we'll just skip over because it's very, very much for our purposes here. And we'll go right to our last tool, which is presence. So wherever you are, be all there. Folks, I don't know how many times I've had a conversation with someone, and I probably even did it this morning, But I pulled out this instant gratification machine and I was like, oh, yeah, no, I'm listening to you. And I'm just like typing something. In fact, I could probably text Jesse right now and say, hey, how's it going? Knowing full well that I'm presenting right now. But that's how much we've learned and been taught to split our attention to do so many different things. And so this statement right here, wherever you are, be all there, is so hard because we've been conditioned to not be that way. We're always looking for the next thing. And what's next? What's the rush? Wherever you are, be all there, be present with that person. I used to support a gal who, if your phone even buzzed in your pocket, you had it on vibrate in your pocket, they were so in tune with what happened. They know somebody's trying to get a hold of you and you could potentially be taken away from them, or your attention could be drawn away from them or whatever. And it's a really hard one to do because we every single day are conditioned out of it. So being present with the people that we're supporting is almost like a gift that we should also give ourselves, in a sense.
And being present is not easy. Like it's exhausting. If you were truly present, I feel anyways, with the people that you're with, whether it's someone you're supporting, a family member, a friend, whoever it is, like it's exhausting after you have been fully present.
Yeah. It's pretty self-explanatory, but like, just think about your cell phone. If you're trying to think about, oh, what was presence again? Think about your cell phone and on the tool it has of taking you away somewhere else. And having kids, it's like the hardest thing ever too, because you're like, man, I'm just hanging out with them and all of a sudden I get a phone call and all of a sudden me cuddling, watching whatever True in the Rainbow Kingdom with them has now been taken away, and I'm now texting Rochelle about tomorrow's presentation. And it's just like, oh, I guess I'm not as important. When you think about that, it's like, oh, it's heartbreaking, but it's real, right? So, presence. Working from home. Oh, bad. I like that too.
Presence is so all-encompassing, and I think it involves our physical and emotional and spiritual presence, that we owe it to those we serve to be present in the moment with them, not just our physical being, but that we're there mentally at all times, that we're in the moment with them emotionally, so that we can be able to respond in the moment, not in the past, not in the future, but right there.
But to truly be with someone is a big effort, and it takes a lot of concentration on our part. It's something we really have to focus on and to be able to put aside the distractions of our day and our phones and our computers and our thoughts of what we're going to do tomorrow and next week, to truly be with the other, with our presence, with our full attention, with our full body, using all of the rest of our tools with our presence to show the person that we really want to be with them in that moment and truly interconnected and together.
Presence is so important because the person can feed off of how you are around them and how they react to you. If you go in there and you're grumpy and you're having a bad day, they're going to totally feed off of that and possibly be grumpy as well. If you go in with a great positive attitude and are happy, your day is probably going to go better. Things like even your eyes, the way you look at them, the way you give them high fives, hugs, touches, the things that you say all reflect towards your presence and how you are around them.
My presence with the individual that we support or that I support, within that presence, what we could do is our eyes can say a lot. My nonverbal is often strong, so I really need to be able to think about how I'm going to enter the room, to be able to give the individual the feeling that I am there for her, I am there with her, and I am there to help her to support her.
Well, when Dr. McGee came in Hawkesbury, I won't forget that. He said, we have to care instead of taking care of them. So I won't forget that. And for me, care means to be present, you know, and to give them a smile, and don't forget to give them a hug, to be nice with them. So the presence for me is really important, and care instead of taking care.
It resonates with me following an experience that I had with an individual who was in solitary confinement, and she was engaging in a story of past trauma and abuse, and it was really heart-wrenching. Like, I'm not doing it justice speaking of it now, but it was extremely heart-wrenching to hear all the traumas and the abuses that she had went through. And she was sitting in a small solitary confinement room, and I was on the other side of that, with speaking to her through a little tiny hatch, and we were both overcome with emotion. She started engaging in headbanging, and then I ended up standing up to walk away because it was too much for me to witness. And in that moment, she yelled that I was like everybody else, leaving when she needed me most. And with that, I thought, this is not about me, this is about her. I couldn't offer a touch. The way we were sitting, she couldn't see me, so she couldn't get that warm, comforting gaze from my eyes. And the words, I had no words. I was overcome with emotion. So I sat on the other side of the solitary confinement door. I was crying, she couldn't see me, and the environment didn't allow for a comforting touch. So all I had to offer at that time was my presence. And that experience has resonated with me because more than anything, she felt that.
Oh no, did it again. Okay. I think that last example always resonates with me because I tried it. There's one time I was supporting T, and we had just gone to get groceries, and it was during the day. And I remember we were talking about Harry Potter, and we were talking about how we couldn't wait for this will date this conversation a bit, but how she really hoped that in the new what's the one animals, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. She really hoped that somehow they could work Severus Snape in that story because he's just her favorite guy. She loved him. And I was like, yeah, that's gonna be really tough because I'll have to recast him, thinking full well she knew that, you know, like, unfortunately the guy who played passed away due to cancer. She's like, oh no, they just use the same guy, they'll just figure it out. And I'm like, well, it will be tough because he's passed away. And I remember we were carrying groceries into her apartment at that time, and she dropped her groceries and she told me to get them in my house. And all it would take was just that snap moment where she did not feel safe anymore. And I used my words so poorly, but I didn't mean to, right? I never brought it up again, but I challenged our trust so badly in that moment. But I did what that woman did. And I said, I won't leave. And she told me to get one. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry that I said what I said. I want to help you put these groceries away. I'm just going to chill out in the hallway. She was adamant about the fact that I should leave, but I told her I won't leave. I'll leave your apartment, but I'll just hang out by the elevator. And if you come out here and you ask me to come back in, I'd be happy to come back in. And so I did. I left her and had her. It was 45 minutes I sat out in the hallway. And I remember I thought about that. This is that moment. This is the moment that I'm going to use that exact thing that lady in that training did. And I did. And she invited me back in the apartment, and she talked to me about how she never wants to talk about that again, but she's so glad I told her. And she's sorry that she said all the things that she said, but all like the journey that we took we were mending it with our words, and we were mending with our presence, we were mending it by being together. But in that moment, it was just like wham. But I remember, I don't know why, I tell this story not because she felt pain at that moment, but because, you know, if you could take one little nugget that you learn in a training someday somewhere and use it and it works, it just feels good. But yeah, so presence. Though there was one thing I wanted to mention, but that story always tricks me and I always forget to mention it after I tell it. I get so excited to tell it, but I think that's it, unless there are any questions.
Yeah, that sort of wraps up the workshop itself. You know, the biggest thing, I think, some of the biggest things to kind of just keep in mind is the importance of building that relationship in order to, you know, nurture and teach and sustain that connectedness, companionship, and community. And just keeping in mind that, you know, this isn't something, like Ben said earlier, we're putting a hat on and then taking it off, which truly is something that's happening, you know, within each and every facet of our lives. When we're using, you know, those pillars, those tools, the better we can develop those relationships with folks.
Okay, so I want to thank you guys so much for coming online and sharing your philosophy and your work with us. From the moment when you guys started talking about your central purpose, nurture, teach, sustain the experience of connectedness, companionship, and community, I was like, this is libraries. You just described what libraries do, totally different context, but you know, this is very much what we do. And I just felt so so comfortable and so very sure that, you know, there would be really great content for us to absorb and ruminate on. And throughout, I kept on writing down questions and comments and thoughts that I was like, well, I want to mention this, or I want to bring this up later. And then you would like close the loop on it, and I would be like, oh, that was perfect. That's exactly what I would have commented. And then you kept answering my questions. So thank you for doing that. That was super, that was super well done. I have a couple questions, and I also want to definitely make room for anybody else who might have questions.
Absolutely.
So if you have a question, feel free to pop your camera on or throw your question into the chat, and I will happily moderate. Joanne?
If I can just say one quick thing
sure.
before we go, or like start with questions. We just got notification that they're gonna do some fire alarm testing in our building today. So that could come down at any point. So just a heads up, we are okay. They're just testing the fire alarms.
Fire. Cool. Joanne?
I couldn't figure out how to turn my mic off or on. What do you do when you're starting to feel low on empathy? Like if you're in a situation, I'm in a situation with a parent where I feel really bad, but I've been stretched thin and I'm feeling low on empathy. I imagine that happens to you guys occasionally, or I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, it really does. I want to think and answer you authentically. Do you have anything off the cuff?
Off the cuff. Again, it's one of those things that like patience, practice, like taking that moment, which is easier said than done a lot of times, I think. I think, you know, when I've experienced that, I've been fortunate that I've been able to tap into other people who can fill that empathy cup, so to speak, when mine can't fill it. But yeah, that's
a good question too. Like, and that's a good response. You have a team hopefully around you that I don't know, but hopefully around you that you can maybe transfer some of that to, because when I am being challenged in the home, and like I said before, I'll just use the exact same example, kicked in my shins and spit down my head. I can go and take that break. I can go and take, because like, and I get that. Like, that's one of the difficult things about gentle teaching is it begs you to be almost like transcend yourself and be so outwardly giving of yourself that it doesn't matter how awful you feel sometimes, because in the moment you know that you need to support that person, right? And that's one of the difficult and one of the most it always comes up in trainings and always comes up about like, how do I maintain my own self-care in all of this? How do I manage all these things that are going on in this world to like bring me down and still push through with my positivity and still be there for that person in the moment. And if I was you in that situation, I would personally find a way to, okay, now I'm going to go continue to serve everyone else. And in my brain, I'm like, I'm going to transfer the power of gentle teaching to this next person so that they can support you the same way I was, and tag them in, like we're wrestling right now, and tag them in. Because on one hand, it's like, oh man, I know how to do this, and I'm going to take on all the problems. And you start filling up that backpack with all the problems. And I know gentle teaching, and I know this client. And at some point, that backpack gets so full that you can't carry anymore. And that's one of the most common problems that I've noticed in people services, as you take them all on. And so if it were me, I would probably find a way to defer to Rochelle and say, hey man, can you carry just this one piece out of this bag for a bit? Because I don't know what to do anymore. And I mean, also knowing full well that I'm a very prideful man, very prideful. And to say, Jesse probably knows more than anyone else, to be able to have to do that is super hard. But like recognizing that you need it is also self-giving and self-caring. I don't know if that answers your question, but if you needed permission to give it to somebody else, pass that paper.
That's sweet. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Great question. Holy smokes.
So one of my questions, your story about T, who kept the chain latched for her first interactions with you, that really made me think about some of the people who come into libraries who you know, they don't have the door between them and the rest of the world or the library staff, but in certain ways they show us that they've got the chain latched. You know, they have their headphones in, or they've got their hood up, and they're not making eye contact with anyone. And so what I was wanting to ask is, what might you recommend? Like, if you can kind of put yourself in the public service space mindset, how might library staff create safety and kind of show value to patrons who are keeping the chain latched, so to speak?
A big question.
Yeah, good one though. Think about your circle of influence, and that's how I would look at this. Is what is my circle of influence? I don't have to change the entire library today. I just have to be a drop in the water. And I think if I'm just, what I would do is I would just work with one person at a time and spread that philosophy and spread that like feeling of goodness to that one person. And how would I do it? Man, every way that I feel like I would do that, I just like, is that overstepping? Is that inappropriate? But just like a little note that says, how are you doing today? And you just plop it in front of that person who's obviously sitting there at their desk, and it's like, hey man, how are you doing today? And it's up to them if they want to talk to you or not, but you've opened a door, I think. And I think that's a cool way of doing that. But just like, that might be, but like, just remember that circle of influence that you have. You don't have to do the entire room today. The entire room is the goal, but you just have to do one part of that room today. And that's how I would answer it.
Yeah.
Like that. Betty Lou?
For me, it starts with acknowledging them when they walk in the door. Hi, welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that goes a long way, right? Because sometimes people don't need you to say anything, but they need that acknowledgement that you've been seen, right? So the simple fact that, yeah, you acknowledge they've even walked in, I think is huge.
I think about the last time I was at the Central Library in Regina here, and 3 or 4 people said hello to me before I even like got in, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, for better or for worse, like, thank you, right? Like, they saw me, like, have you been helped? Do you know what you need to do? And maybe that's amazing, maybe that's awful from your guys' perspective, but I was like, man, I just walked in the door, and every person in here that I've seen so far was like, hey, what's up? Have you been helped? Are you in a meeting? Because I came in with a colleague who had a bag, and like, it was just very easy to navigate once and it wasn't overwhelming either. I say that, I'm like, hey, how, hi, yeah, okay, cool. If I'm in gentle teaching world, I'm like, well, that's a lot of overwhelming stimulation. But it was just like, hey, how's it going? And I mean, it might be leftover from COVID, it might be whatever, but they made sure that, just like you said, Betty Lou, that they acknowledged me and I felt seen for sure. And I tell that story now because it's very applicable. It made me feel exactly like you just described.
Like that. I want to leave room for anybody else that has questions, but I do have another question. So I will ask it, and that will give anybody who has other questions more time to formulate their question.
I've got half an hour, so.
So after we leave here, each of us is gonna kind of go on our way, and we're going to think about what this gentle teaching philosophy means to us and how we might integrate it into our own lives, our daily practice with patrons or staff at the libraries, or to be working with the people that we work with on a daily basis. And it's possible that some of us might want to speak to others about what we just learned today. And I was wondering if either of you has an elevator speech that you kind of give when like somebody's like, gentle teaching, what's that? That sounds like horse talk. Do you have an elevator speech that sort of like quickly encompasses gentle teaching in a way that is palatable to outlanders?
I know you do though. Ben for sure does, because I got to see that elevator pitch one day actually when we were doing a training.
I had an hour.
No, it was in our lunch and you did it.
It's to support people the way they want to be treated rather than the way that we choose to treat them. So it's that platinum rule. And I would just say gentle teaching is essentially our central purpose and applying it to that concept. So to treat people the way they deserve to be treated rather than the way that society has deemed inappropriate to treat them. And I mean, this is obviously not an elevator pitch anymore, but I'd say like it is breaking down the stigma of what it is to treat people like anything. Because right now, if I went to the shopping mall, I'm zapped. Okay, I mean, I've just done this and I've presented in a way I've never presented before, and I'm zapped. But my go-to is always to just like, you know what, I'm zapped. I don't feel like it. And if I see someone I know, I'm going to dip into that store. And I go and do that. And it's because I don't want to engage with someone right now. But I think this philosophy makes it okay and gives that idea space. But I also think that philosophy, if we're seeing it through, is also very intentional with the fact that, oh man, that person just dipped, they probably don't want to be talked to today. So I think it's a two-way street. Obviously, I would never, I'm pointing at you, Jesse, right now, but like, anyway, I wouldn't treat you the way, well, no, you're my sister, so this is weird. But also like in past, I would treat you the way that I thought was right. And now looking at you as a human being and thinking about you differently, because I never did that before. I honor you in conversations. I honor your words in conversations, whether I appreciate them or don't. You know what I mean? You have ideas and philosophical concepts that I'm just like, no, that's in direct conflict with who I am as a human being. But because I'm trying to make you laugh, but because I love you and I value you, it has space. And I think so. That's not the elevator pitch, but I think it's just it's in our actions and it's in executing them every day. Did you develop an elevator speech in the entire ramble?
No, I truly just think it's so much more like it's something you show as opposed to, I think, talk about too, right? Like, I don't know.
Supporting people the way they deserve to be treated rather than the way that society dictates they be treated. That's
there you go.
Like it. Well, that's a good starting point. All right, so I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat. So unless I'm missing it, I think, oh, Joanne, welcome back.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I actually, this isn't much of a question. It's something that I told Jesse in the chat. I don't know what kind of response I'm looking for here, but I was, first of all, surprised to see that touch was one of the, I don't know, the tenets of just gentle teaching. And then I realized that we have different audiences, sort of. And so, and libraries, touch isn't usually welcome because you don't want to open up any ideas of relationships with people, because sometimes people get the wrong idea. And I don't know, yeah, like I said, I don't really know what response I'm looking for here. It just sort of surprised me. I don't know if any other staff, library staff, felt that way, but
Yeah, I mean, I get that feedback 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of touch and you look at that slide, which is why I really hope that we change that slide, but I'm just going to do something really weird to you. It doesn't have to be like, hi.
Yeah.
But like, if I go like this to you and you decide to reciprocate, that's touch. I mean, you can high five, and if you're into it, you can high five, but like, people will tell you the right way that they want to be touched. And I feel like it actually happened today. Who did I go to fist bump today? Someone downstairs in the studio I went to fist bump today, and they like didn't get it, or they thought that I was gonna hit them or whatever. And I was like, "What's up?" And they were just like, and they just talked to me, and I was just like, went like this, and it was like, I just fist bumped myself because I guess I needed that. But at the end of the day, it's just like whatever, right? And like, it doesn't have to, I think when you think about hands in general and touch in general, it has that like, for the people we support and quite possibly people who enter your library, it's got that like negative connotation, right? And like we were talking about it, if you're watching the video, you didn't get to see this, but like, if I'm approaching the camera and I'm just like this, what does that look like to you? I've got something in my hands that you cannot see. I've got something in my hands that I'm keeping from you. My fists are clenched. If I'm like this, what are my hands doing? They're behind my back, right?
Yeah.
And I'm showing you something. So if I'm walking around like this, I'm like, hey, what's up? That's hands, that's touch. It can be, right? So I don't think I answered your question so much as I maybe made it more complicated, but think about.
I didn't really ask a question, so. But I know, like, I was thinking more along the lines of body language too, like not necessarily touch, but, you know, don't have your arms crossed in front of you all the time.
Yeah, and like honestly, it's just breaking that. Like, it's also for us as like, I don't know what the power dynamic is because gentle teaching doesn't have that power dynamic. But if we're like the library workers essentially, or I'm a worker, as some of the people would call me, if I'm walking around like this, you know, I'm sending a message, right? But also if someone's sitting like this in the library, does that mean that they're pouting, they're upset, or maybe they're just relaxed? I don't know, but I can control what I know and I can control what I do. And that is like not walking around the library like this, like I'm a warden in a jail. You know what I mean?
Well, and just because we have the 4 tools, it doesn't mean we need to use all of them at the same time either, right? Like, it might just be presence and words. We're acknowledging people when they're walking in, and like our touch or our hands aren't even coming into play because it's not needed in that moment either.
Yeah, I guess it would be pretty weird if you walked into the library and you just like saw the person, you're like, come on in, let's do this.
Bring it in, buddy.
I mean, it would be weird for everybody involved, I think. But like, so then what other, like, okay, my eyes are going to be that uplifting, like thing that people see that are wide, and my smile and my words, welcome, I'm so glad you're here. It just, you're right. That's a good point. You don't have to use them all at once, right?
Yeah. And that makes sense. So cool. Thanks, guys.
All good commentary.
Okay, so this is our final call for any other questions that people have been ruminating on. But perhaps if we're not done formulating questions in the moment, is there somebody that I might be able to forward some questions onto? I know that I can just bring them up at family dinner, but I'm sort of formally asking for the correct pathway.
Yeah, either one of our emails are both great. We're both like both on the mentor track here at CORE. What that means is we're both like equipped to answer them. So yeah, Rochelle, and you got both of our emails. So I trust you can disseminate those however you need to.
Can do.
I see Betty Lou's audio is on, just so, in case you wanted to say, or don't.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and Joanne will laugh at me, but when she came for her site visit, I had a surprise drop-in visit from the fellow who curates the traveling exhibitions for the Art Gallery of Alberta. And he walked in and introduced himself, and my response was a total fangirl. Oh my God, can I hug you?
So you were like, oh, give it here.
Was he a hugger?
Yeah.
I think it might have weirded him out a little bit, but he was okay with it.
But he remembered you for sure, and he was probably very happy that he had somebody be like, oh man, I went to this art gallery. Very rarely do we as artists get a chance to be like, yo, yeah, I'm in lights right now.
The background is too that Betty Lou's been back and forth and talking to him for years now. Hasn't it been years? Yeah, so it's not like he had no idea who she was. So
for sure,
like it wasn't.
Yeah, he had been in Cold Lake with his partner, and they made a point of stopping at the library to see because they were going through tutorials.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
Just think about it this way: you made that person feel safe enough that they could come stop in at your library, and valued enough. And if he hugged you back and honestly hugged you back, he was valuing back to you too. As like after school specially as all of that was. It's gentle teaching in practice, right? It's so weird. I was gonna say this earlier and I didn't. So anyone that's still on, when we get supports coming in here and starting their roles with CORE at the very beginning, some of them can't even cook an egg. And I'm just like being honest, like they're going in to support the life of the people. And I'm just going to use the word our clients to like help them live and be alive and learn things. And some of them can't cook an egg. And so when you talk about this gentle teaching stuff, it's like super surface level. Duh, I can do that. Oh, duh, I can like be present, not on my phone. I'm like, prove it. I can use my words to bring people up and not tear them down. Meanwhile, they're like talking crap about their fellow employees right in front of the people that they're supporting, teaching them that that's okay. Like all these little things and all these little nuances. It's so simple. You look at that whole training module, and it's so simple. But if you're actually doing it, and if you're actually practicing that every day, man, I break those rules a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you. I break them a lot. And I sit here and pride myself on saying, I try and wear my gentle teaching hat every day. But like, man, I break those rules sometimes. And so like, it's super simple to like talk about, but it is one of those things that unless you practice it, it's like, how long do they say it takes you to like develop a routine in something like 6 weeks or something like that? Yeah. Anyway, it's just as hard with gentle teaching, even though we do that all the time, right?
Well, this is the kind of stuff though, like if you haven't been sleeping well, if you haven't had an appetite or haven't been feeling well, it's hard to bring
absolutely
it all to the table and like putting yourself out there to help other people all the time, like the empathy question before you get to a point where you're like, hi, my own bucket is low, right? And so
and that's the challenge I often put out to our supports is we all come with our own baggage, our own experiences, right? And maybe we haven't shared that with colleagues, but you know, if you can't be there 100%, if you're only at 70, like come with 100% of that 70.
Yeah.
Right. But again, like we talked about, there needs to be that balance on the other side where you're making sure you're being taken care of too.
Yeah.
Love it.
I could clearly talk to you guys forever. So Jesse,
you can come visit me, Joanne, and I can set you up with a family dinner.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving's coming up here, so
that's true.
There's always room for one more at the table. That's another little tidbit PS that fits so well with our philosophy that that I just love. And there's always room for another person at the table. Whether you're doing a puzzle, whether you're playing solitaire, there's always a room for someone else at the table. And that, think about that just from a circular table, even from this table's perspective, it comes and it just turns into a big circle. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but no one's left out. And I like that. Kara Milne, actually, who's from Alberta, that's her little, I don't want to say that's her claim to fame because she's a fantastic speaker, but if you're ever looking for somebody, she's pretty expensive, but Kara Milne, she's got some good stuff about community and neighborhoods and being known. And when you're known, you're missed.
I like that. Okay, well, we've done our final call for questions, so I'm going to just wrap things up with a huge thank you to Ben and Rochelle for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. I think it was very, very interesting. And for anybody who hasn't glanced at the chat, I just want to clarify that Spit Down My Head is a Happy Gilmore reference. And if you're not familiar with Billy Madison's body of work, it's certainly worth checking out. My recommendation for your weekend. So thank you once again to Ben and Rochelle, and thank you to our library managers for taking the time out of your work week to participate in this session. I hope that you got a couple new ideas or some thoughts to think about. And I guess I'm gonna edit this a little bit and I'm gonna pop it up onto our YouTube channel so that anyone who was unable to attend today will be able to watch the replay. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of your week.